and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Today's guest I'm very excited about because I've been wanting to speak to her for a very long time. She was originally on our screens many moons ago in The Only Way is Essex. She's done so much since then. It's Lydia Bright.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How are you?
I've been wanting to come on this for a long time as well, so thank you. We've finally made it happen.
We've made it. How are you feeling? Are you well rested?
Feeling good.
Are you sleeping and all that jazz?
Yeah, do you know what? I sleep very well. We were gonna go into this before we started recording, didn't we? But I do co-sleep, and people would think that maybe that means that I don't get a lot of sleep because I sleep with my child. But I actually sleep very peacefully, and I'm very lucky that my child has slept through the night since she was 8 weeks old.
And have you co-slept the whole time?
Pretty much. Well, she was in a cot.
Yeah.
And then, as soon as she got out of her cot, then, she came into bed with me. But I'm one of them rare mums that very rarely is tired because my child's always been amazing at sleep.
That's so good.
So I'm very lucky, and let's just hope it stays that way.
I do think there's, because our kids jump into bed with us a lot when Tom's away, but also they're like little ninjas. They just appear, in the bed next to me. And I quite like being able to reach across and touch a little head and feeling like the little curls or whatever, and just kind of going, there you are. It's there's great comfort, I think, in that, which is probably why she slept really well as well.
Maybe, yeah. And I find it's like, I think as adults, we don't really enjoy sleeping alone, do we? And where I am a single parent, it's always just felt very comforting, me having her next to me. And it's not like I was ever in a rush to get her out for somebody else to be there.
Yeah.
So it's just worked for us. Don't get me wrong, I do sleep still with my maternity pillow.
Do you?
The big, the big U maternity pillows.
Lydia, I think you meant to get rid of that.
No, I've not got rid of that. Firstly, because I do actually struggle with my back, but secondly, it kind of works as like a barricade because obviously children do move a lot in the night.
She's still moving, yeah.
Oh my gosh, she's like Cirque du Soleil in her dreams because she does all sorts, like she's everywhere. So that kind of cushions the kicks and the hits and the blows. So I mean, if I could give a tip to anyone that wants to continue co-sleeping, I would invest in a giant, like U-shaped maternity pillow. Like mine goes all the way down to the knees.
I love this so much.
It's a king size bed, but the pillow probably takes up half of it.
I hug a pillow when I go to sleep.
Yeah,
so maybe
nice.
a pregnancy pillow is not a bad thing. It is the whole back thing.
Yeah.
Because also taking the pressure off of different parts.
I don't know if you found this as well. Like I struggled a lot when I was pregnant with lower back pain.
Yeah.
And I had like the early stages of my pregnancy, I had back labour. And ever since then, my back's always felt a little bit like when I get to an evening, it always feels a little bit sore.
Yeah.
So the maternity pillow, it's got lots and lots of benefits.
I've heard people like clinging onto the maternity bras and not wanting to get rid of those.
Yeah.
But not the pillow.
I don't wear bras at all, so
Well,
I don't really have a lot to hold.
Good for you, Lydia.
I mean,
okay?
I'd love to still have to wear a maternity bra, but there's not really a lot to put in it. So I'm okay with that one.
I'm loving this chat already. Lydia, tell us more about where you grew up. Because obviously, Towie, everyone's going to think that you're a Brentwood born and bred.
Yes.
That's not the case.
Yeah, no, I've always been like on the cusp of Essex, like the Essex, London, East London borders. I grew up in Wanstead. And then we actually went to the same school, didn't we? We've just found out. Because we went to one of them schools that everybody travels from all over.
I mean, you travelled far. I was the next door neighbour.
Yeah. To be fair, you were lucky, but it was like it was a language school, wasn't it? So a lot of people would travel like further than I did to go to this school. It was an amazing school, Anglo-European, pick it up. It was absolutely incredible. But I used to travel into school every day. So that's maybe why I've got the really strong Essex accent. Mind you haven't.
I had hearing difficulties as a child, that's why.
Oh, brilliant. I wish I did. And then I went to school there. And then now, I live where I've always grown up. So, yeah, I'm very lucky because I feel like I've got the best of both worlds. I can get into the city really quickly.
Yeah.
I can hop on the Central Line, but then I've still got like the green and the lushness of
It's gorgeous
the
around
countryside. So, yeah, I'm still there.
What was your childhood like?
Lovely, very not traditional, like not your normal like 2.5 children, 2-parent family. So my mum and dad were foster carers and still are. So they've been fostering for 30, coming up to 32 years.
Wow.
And they've had hundreds of children. Even this morning, so I left my mum's house and at the moment she has got 5 placements. So yeah, I grew up in a very chaotic but incredible
Are you the
home.
oldest?
No, so my parents have got 4 biological children.
Yeah.
And then they've got 2 children that they long-term fostered.
Right.
So that's pretty much like adoption. And then on top of that, they've had placements throughout the years.
Yeah.
So
your whole life, that's all you've known?
My whole life. But where I'm the second eldest, so my eldest sister is only 13 months older than me.
Right.
So where we were the eldest, it was like we were like mums from such a young age.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was like 6, 7, I'd always have babies on my hips. I've grown up with babies and my mum, always looked at, she's done all different ages, to be honest, like teenagers, like children, toddlers, babies, but babies is the most common age that she looks after. So, yeah, I've grown up with babies forever.
What was that like, having different children around? Or did you think you understood, or at what age did you understand that children were going to be coming and going?
Well, I think where I was practically born into it, so I was only 13 months when my parents decided to become foster carers, and that was because it's crazy when I say this, but my mum didn't actually want to have children. No. So she worked in fashion.
Right.
She had an amazing job and she travelled a lot with it. And my dad was always desperate for children. So my mum had her first child at 30, which back then was classed as old. Yeah. So she had my sister when she was 30. And then I was a lovely surprise, the best surprise that ever came, because then Georgia, my elder sister, was only 3 months old and she fell pregnant with me. So then she had 2 under 2 and she was like, I need to think of a new career. I can't go back into what I was doing, putting 2 children very young age through childcare. So as she explained it was a complete fluke that she went into fostering. She just met somebody who explained to her what the job was and she put her forward to her local borough, which was Hackney, and they contacted her. There was a massive shortage for foster carers at the time, and to be honest, there still is now. And she became a foster carer when we were young and thought that maybe it was just something that she'd do until we went to school.
Yeah.
And she fell in love with it. And my mum is the most passionate, ambitious, admirable woman in her career, in her field. She has got so much experience now, but she absolutely loves what she does. So she's in her mid-60s now. And she is no way slowing down at all anytime soon. She's so passionate about fostering.
What was that like for you growing up?
I think that, look, I won't always paint, and I'm honest about it, I won't always paint the good side of it. There was goods and there was amazing.
There has to be, because also you're taking in children who are in situations that are out of their control, and that's got to be that's a lot for a young child to carry.
Yeah, exactly. So we always say no child will come into care from coming from the perfect family.
Yeah.
So you're never going to get a perfect child. You're not going to get, oh my God, there's some scenarios where the children come in and they're amazing. And you think, how are you so lovely and kind and caring, even though you've come from all of that. But some children come in and they are quite rightly very disruptive. And I think that's part of the reward for my parents, because they get to see their personalities like blossom and, you know, they nurture them and they settle. But I think as a child, there were like some disruptive times. But I always say, and it's something that I've always said, for every negative aspect there is to fostering, like being part of a foster family, I always say there's like 100 positives. And honestly, it was the most incredible upbringing. Like, for one, we never ever were lonely. Like it was like, you know, like if you'd ever have all your friends round and it was just like amazing, you'd play out in the garden. That was us constantly. There was always so many children. Like there was always like games to play. There was always so much like childhood imagination. And it was like chaotic, but I think children quite like that. I mean, I enjoyed it. And I was very, very lucky actually that I had a very good relationship with my grandparents on my mum's side, my maternal grandparents. So if ever I needed like time out from the madness, they always like came to my rescue. So I spent a lot of time with them, probably like on average like 2 days of the week was with my grandparents. And they lived in like a lovely countryside home with like only small, like 2-3 bedroom like countryside home, but it had like lovely fields, and they used to like spoil us rotten. Like I used to have like Eggy Dip brought to bed with chocolate mousse, and I used to get like 100% undivided attention. So I think I was very lucky that I had like both elements. Like I had like the excitement of being part of like a massive busy household, and then also the retreat of my grandparents.
Yeah, it's nice that you had that external support.
Yeah, it was. It was a very magical, but very like untraditional. Yeah. And a lot of people just wouldn't like get it. Like when I went to school, they just found the whole thing just bonkers. Because I think back then as well, like fostering wasn't spoken about very often. Yeah.
Well, I imagine if it was, it would be just shown in one light. Yeah. You know, the nuances of it wouldn't have been seen, or the different, all the different aspects of it and stuff. Yeah. And I just think like fostering wasn't celebrated as much as it is now. And also not just foster families, but like all families, like, well, the world that we lived in back then wasn't as inclusive, was it? We didn't really speak out so openly about like single parent families, foster families, same-sex families. Like it was just kind of always spoken about as like the traditional setup. And I think 2.4 children.
Exactly. And I think that's where the world has become so much better, that we now celebrate inclusivity.
Yeah. Getting pregnant with Loretta.
Yes.
Tell me about the tarot cards.
Oh my gosh, yeah. How did you find out about that? Did I put that on my Instagram maybe?
I did a deep dive. It was somewhere.
I think you must have really scrolled deep on my Instagram, because I post a lot.
I do my research.
You really have, haven't you? You've gone back to like 2020. So, yeah, I was on a trip in Mykonos, like an influencer work trip, and we did angel cards, and it said that I was going to have a baby, and then I think it was only like 2 months later.
It was like a gift of God, is what the actual card
Yes, it
was,
did.
Yeah.
And I interpreted that as like a child, and then it was quite shortly after that I fell
Did that
pregnant.
make you go, actually now's the time?
I think it was always discussed. So me and Loretta's father were together for 2 years, and it was like being discussed like around the time that I fell pregnant, that I was going to come off contraception and we were going to start trying, and it happened so quickly, like 3 days. And so this is maybe something that people should take heed of. I thought once you've been on contraception for like a very long time, like I was on it for years, like a contraceptive pill, that maybe it would take some time for that to come out of your system.
My period didn't even come back for a year.
Didn't it?
No. And then it only came back because I had to start taking something else to try and make something happen. Yeah.
Well, I kind of assumed that like, I wouldn't have a period for a long time. I wouldn't be able to get pregnant. And I've got polycystic ovaries, so throw that in the mix. And I was thinking, it might take me a while. So I thought, I'll come off, and hopefully it might happen like within like 6 months to a year, I was no way near planning for me to fall pregnant as quickly as what I did, because I actually went and filmed Celebrity Hunted when I was pregnant. And obviously I didn't want to be pregnant filming that because we were on the run and, you know, I had to bring my A game. I didn't. I was first out, thank goodness. I couldn't wait to be caught because I was pregnant. I had morning sickness. It was horrific. But yeah, I fell pregnant after 3 days of being off contraception.
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Well, tell me about finding out. What was that like?
So
did you think to yourself, well, did something happen to make you go, oh, I should probably test? Especially if you're thinking I might not have a period for a long time.
So the only reason that I took the morning the pregnancy test. Sorry, I got all my words wrong then.
It's one of them.
Yeah. The only reason I took the pregnancy test is because I was going on Celebrity Hunted.
Right.
And I thought, right, I'm off contraception, probably not pregnant. I've not got any symptoms, but maybe I should just check because I'm about to do this show and I don't know how long I'm going to be on the run for. So I just did it by myself, like not really expecting anything. And then I looked at it and I was like, what? How the hell was that happened? I didn't really think it could happen that quickly. And then the whole placebo effect, the minute that test said that I was pregnant, every symptom known to well. I was sick. I was like, stomach going around. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to film this TV show? I've got every symptom, but it was like the placebo effect. I remember filming the like titles of it. I was so dizzy, like I felt like I was just really like paralytically drunk. Like I got that a lot through my first trimester. Like just felt like the world was spinning the whole time. But it was really weird. I didn't have one like not symptom. What's the word?
You weren't sick.
I didn't have like one feeling of being pregnant until I saw that I was pregnant.
That's really weird.
So.
Oh, and you and Lucy were pregnant at the same time then? So did you both do that show knowing that you were early doors pregnant?
We both found out within 24 hours.
No!
So I called her and was like, Luce, I'm pregnant. And she was like, this is amazing. I was like, how am I going to do this show? And I was like, we can't tell the producers because I can't tell anyone I'm pregnant because I was like, must have been 6 weeks or whatever at that point, maybe even earlier. And I was just like, oh, you're going to have to look after me. And she was just like, well, are you feeling anything? And I was like, I wasn't, but now my boobs are aching. I got morning sickness. And I was telling her all these feelings. And then she got off the phone. And then she then started thinking, have I got all these symptoms as well? She was like, I've started feeling that. She went and got a pregnancy test and called me back within like 6-7 hours and was just like, I am as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we were both in like total shock. Although like both of us were off contraception, neither of us thought it was going to happen as quickly as what it did. So, I mean, it was good that we had each other on this show. But yeah, we were just...
And you kept it secret the whole time?
We kept it secret the whole time on that show. But we were like secretly hoping to be first out. We were horrendous.
Get the money and run.
Oh my gosh, we were so bad. Like, yeah, that really wasn't our finest TV moments for sure. We were like so irritable. The poor producer that was working with us the whole time, you know, we was like, yeah, I can't expect that we were pleasant at all because we were just, all we wanted to do was just sleep. And a lot of it is travelling as well. And we were constantly like in the car feeling sick. So yeah, after that initial show finished, I think then the excitement started building up. Then I was like, oh, okay, right, I can, you know, be at home and you know, enjoy this a little bit more. But then
I guess early days, were you literally thinking, oh my God, I've got this show to do? Was that the main thing taking up?
Yeah, that was like the main thing that I was like worried about. And then when the show was over, I was like, oh, okay, now I can kind of get it, like enjoy it. And then I broke up with Loretta's father. So actually, I can't say that it was probably an enjoyable pregnancy. It was a very emotional time for me.
Well, especially if you think you're heading in one direction.
Yeah.
You fall pregnant when you're feeling like you don't know if it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, especially with PCOS in the mix.
Yes.
And, you know, you see your future being one way and all of a sudden it's not looking like that.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it was like the realisation, exactly that. It was the realisation that I wasn't going to be doing it the way that I set out to do it. And my character is that, I was always such a perfectionist.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was a tough time. Definitely being pregnant, I didn't particularly like flourish in those times. And then, but like now I think now I'm super grateful in the weirdest possible way. Like at the time it was really, really hard because it was totally unexpected and, it was like a very, very tough time. But now I'm grateful that it actually happened the way it did, because now I don't think that we would have actually worked together. And I think that maybe it's best that it happened when I was pregnant. So it's like I always have done it by myself.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's when probably people find it tough being like a 2-person team to then becoming a single parent. I think that they then find that journey tough to adapt to.
Yeah.
But where it's always been me doing it, there's nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
So I think, like this is a thing as well. You've always got to think everything in life happens for a reason. And
well, if you'd have broken up 3 months earlier, then you wouldn't have Loretta. So
exactly. And I am a massive believer in fate and that everything in life happens for a reason, and that was supposed to be your journey. And when I was young, I thought it was going to be what I envisioned back then was the perfect way, and get married and have children and do it properly, be this happy, perfect family.
That's the thing, do it properly. That's how we're all conditioned.
Definitely. And have this picket fence and chickens in my garden and be perfect. That was like the vision that I had. But I don't actually think that is my journey. I think it was always supposed to be this way.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that it did happen. At the time, don't get me wrong, it was hard believing that.
And also not a lot of other stuff to navigate when you're already going through something that's huge, that's life-changing.
Yeah, definitely. And hormones in the mix.
Yeah.
But I kept telling myself that everything in life happens for a reason and it was always meant to be this way. And now I am a single mum and I have been for 3.5 years. I definitely think it was always supposed to be this way. I was always supposed to have my first child by myself.
Yeah.
Because I think as well, I've always wanted to be a mum because of my upbringing. And I've always, had children around me. But I think my whole life as well, I've always kind of had to give them back. And I think that I've always felt like I found that quite hard, and I think I found that harder as I'm getting older, like that attachment and then having to give them back and stuff. And I've always been naturally a very maternal person. And, once I fall in love with these children. And I think that this was supposed to happen because I was supposed to have a baby by myself and I was supposed to give her all my love and her be just mine and us have this lovely little bond. And I just think that, and also as well, I think maybe because my platform and maybe I was supposed to be a single mum so that I can also share my experience and my world with other people going through similar circumstances. Because look, I'm not the first woman that's been left when she's pregnant and I'm not going to be the last one. And I think it's just being able to speak about that and say
Is it difficult to speak about it though in terms of protecting your heart and your almost privacy and, everything that's going on? Do you know what I mean? Because you can share. Yeah. But there's got to be parts of it that are difficult to talk about.
Yeah, I think that I feel like I'm a lot more open to speak about it now because I've never wanted to speak about it as much back then because I was always cautious that I would hurt Loretta's father. And I've never wanted to rock the boat there as well because no matter what's happened between us, he will always be Loretta's father and I will always love and care for him and I would always I always want that to be positive, and I don't want anyone. I don't want her or anyone to ever think negatively upon him. And we're in a very good place now.
You don't want to rock that, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like I was always quite nervous about speaking about it in the past as well, because as well, like at the beginning when we weren't together as well, like it wasn't always like a great relationship. Naturally, we weren't together. So, you know, there was always going to be like navigating like how it was going to happen, and also as well, like there was hurt, as I said, you know, at the time I kept telling myself, you know, everything in life happens for a reason. But at the beginning there was hurt and there was upset there. So it wasn't always great. And I think that, you know, we've got to a great place that I feel like I can speak about it and I feel happy about it. And, you know, I've always been nervous maybe beforehand because I've never wanted people to maybe feel wrongly about him because he's not a bad person.
Yeah.
It's just life.
Yeah.
This is life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've always wanted it to be like a positive conversation.
Well, and celebrating the fact that you're doing it on your own rather than, you know, oh, isn't it sad? Like you're doing it on your own, you're completely and utterly bossing it.
Yeah, exactly. Like and this is the thing, I've always felt very positive about being a single mum.
Yeah.
And I'm also like, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm very lucky in life that, you know, I was given an amazing platform and, you know, I've been able to create a lovely life for me and Loretta. So, you know, I speak about my very positive experience, but I know that maybe I'm not like everybody, like in terms of my life and whatever. But for me, I think even taking away all of that, it's always been a really positive thing for me being a single mum. Maybe because I had a lot of experience being a mum, maybe growing up. Like, don't get me wrong, like all parents, there's parts of it that are very overwhelming. Yeah. But I don't think that that's any different from being a single mum to a two-parent family. Yeah. And I also am conscious of the fact that although I am a single mum, I've also always had like a really great support network in terms of my family. Yeah. I've got so many siblings.
Talk to me about telling everyone, like your family, because I watched the video and it is so utterly gorgeous. You made little cards for everyone.
I did. And it was like a bit of a cheat. So not cheat, it was like a bit of a prank. So my best friend, who is like a cousin, basically, we've grown up together, she was pregnant and she announced that she was pregnant like 4 months before. So I pretended that the card was for her like welcoming baby party type thing. So my sister, I don't know if you remember the video, my sister just wasn't getting it. My youngest sister, Romana, she just wasn't like getting it. But yeah, they were so happy because it's my parents' first grandchild.
But there's literally a point in the video where it feels like there's hysterical laughter and tears. Like you can just feel that emotion coming through.
I'm so glad that I filmed the moment.
Yeah.
But the thing is, where the camera was hidden, you couldn't quite see everybody.
Yeah, no one really got into shot very well.
No.
You didn't really.
It wasn't like a polished videographer like filming it. But you got like, all the real raw emotions. They were so happy, like so happy. And also as well, this is the other thing where I feel like I was very lucky. I always feel like for me as well, like everything in life happens at the right time. And Loretta was born 2 weeks before the pandemic. So we were, not before the pandemic, before we went into lockdown.
Yeah.
So for my family, it was just such like she was the most amazing blessing because I locked down with them and we all kind of got to bring her up together at the beginning. So I was very lucky that although I was a single mum, like I got to lock down with my parents and my brothers and sisters during the toughest time, the newborn time, which is really, really tough. And I had like all of these people like helping me do it. Yeah. So she came into our lives at like the perfect time. She was like, it was everything in life happens for a reason. She came in, like right at the perfect time. She came in when my dad retired as well because of COVID. So he's got a lung condition. Because of COVID, it forced him into early retirement. So Loretta became like his focus because his whole life, he's worked so hard. He's like in the building. So, you know, very long hours, very manual labour, and he's always been a grafter.
Yeah.
So when he had to retire, you know, he would have found it a lot more difficult had Loretta not been around, because of he's always been used to filling his days with so much. And whilst he then, you know, like he now helps my mum a lot with the fostering, Loretta was just like she got him through like maybe that hard time of retirement.
Yeah.
When people were probably more prone to getting depression and, you know, adapting to that change in life. Loretta became like his world and still is his world, and they've got the most amazing bond. It's like incredible.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I think, isn't it? I think in some ways, it gave us time to sort of be with the people around us.
Definitely.
So the start of your pregnancy, you felt, eventually once you knew, you felt all the symptoms.
Yes.
How was the rest of your pregnancy?
Yes. So the first trimester, there was a lot of sickness. And then the rest of the pregnancy, yeah, although there were times when I probably felt quite lonely in the pregnancy. Like, don't get me wrong, I've got loads of friends and loads of family, but it felt quite lonely that I wasn't doing it with someone. Those were moments that I used to get. But again, that whole thing, like, just kept telling myself, like, there is a reason for this. Like, this is the way it's supposed to be. Like, you will get out the other side. And then Loretta was born. And
hold on, we're going to have a birth story here. Come on.
The most amazing birth.
Well, how did you feel going into it? Did you feel like you were...
I was so prepared.
Really?
Because just like Kate Middleton, I did hypnobirthing.
And me.
I think I did it after listening to your podcast, actually. Yeah, I was just like, I need to get me some of that. And because this is the thing as well, podcasts became like a big thing when I was pregnant as well, because of... I was just trying to constantly try and listen to somebody who had been through a similar experience to me. All I wanted to do was just pinning on to listening to podcasts of anybody that was single parents and stuff. So yeah, I think I remember thinking that I'm going to do hypnobirthing after I listened to Kate Middleton's podcast with you. And yeah, I mean, even though it's not spiritual, I'm quite a spiritual person, and I believe in the mind is very powerful over the body. So I went into it very positively. And I don't know if that's the only thing that made the birth amazing. I think there's a lot of factors involved, like my mum, historically, my mum had great births, and I think that's a big factor.
Might be a genetic thing,
yeah. But also, I think the hypnobirthing definitely helped as well. So I went into it very positive. I was very excited to meet my baby.
Where were you when you first started realising you were in labour?
So this is where people are going to think that I'm Iron Woman, and I honestly don't know how this happened. But I was renovating my home at the time with my dad, and I thought I weed myself. I was lifting a sofa with my dad. My dad was like, we shouldn't be doing this. All throughout my pregnancy, I was renovating this house. I was nesting on steroids. And where me and Loretta's dad weren't together, I really wanted to stay in the house that I'd lived in for so many years, but I just had to make it suitable for a baby. So my waters broke, but I thought I wet myself because it was only slight. And I said to my dad, I've got to sit down. Anyway, my dad bundled me into his van and we drove home. And I was like, I don't know if this is labour or this is Braxton Hicks, because I was early.
Yeah.
I was like, I think this might just be Braxton Hicks. I was very lucky that I had my mum's best friend, Jo, was a midwife, and she became like a private midwife for me all throughout my labour, just as my mum's friend.
Yeah.
And I called her and I said, I think I might be having Braxton Hicks. I'm not 100% certain though, so would you mind coming over and checking me? And she said, yeah, sure, this is 5 p.m. So she was like, yeah, sure, it is rush hour, so just bear with me. So I was just yeah, no problem. Called Loretta's dad. So he's North London and I'm East London. So I was like, I think I'm going into, I might just be going through Braxton Hicks, but I'm getting Jo the midwife to come over, so maybe you should come over. He was like, okay, it might take me a little while because of rush hour, but I'm going to try my hardest. Everyone's trying rush hour to get to me. By the time my midwife got to me, So this would have been like 6 o'clock. She measured me and she said, "You're 5 centimetres dilated. We need to get you to a hospital right away." So I was just like, oh, okay, this is happening. So we've got in our car, we've drove there. By 11 o'clock, I gave birth to Loretta.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I think she was born, it's on my keys, I think it was 11:03. And I got there and I had everything that I wanted. So I gave birth at the hospital, but it's like a birthing unit attached to the hospital. So it's not like a labour ward. It's like you can give birth in the water. There's water pools and stuff. And it's the same hospital that I was born at, Whipps Cross, in Leytonstone. That's where Loretta was born. And yeah, I gave birth in a birthing pool. It was lovely because they just like recently renovated it. I think like that year. So everything was like brand new. Honestly, it felt like a whole private experience. They had like battery flicker, obviously not real candles, but battery flickered candles all around the pool. We jacked up my music to like the music and I had like my own music playing. Like it feels like I honestly had like a whole private
Who was
experience.
with you?
I had Loretta's because she was born 2 weeks before COVID.
Yeah.
I was allowed to have 2 birthing partners. So I had my mum, Loretta's dad. My private midwife, Jo, actually worked for Whipps Cross Hospital. So
Amazing.
she was there.
Yeah.
And then one other midwife. And everything went amazing. Yeah. So they did all my tests, got me in the water. I had playing in the background. My favourite movie is The Holiday.
Yeah.
And I love the soundtrack of The Holiday. It's like a classical composer. I never would listen to classical music, but it's just so relaxing. So I had that album playing. Hans Zimmer, he's called the classical composer. I had The Holiday playing in the background and it was just lovely. I filmed the whole thing. Just so I can look back on it.
Yeah.
And I watch it back sometimes and I cry all the time because it's just it's so lovely.
How did it feel watching that back the first time? Because I feel like if I think about my births, it's such an out of body experience. Like for me, I felt like I had to really give myself over to what my body was doing.
Yeah.
And that's the hypnobirthing thing, I guess. It's not fighting it. It's just kind of trusting your body and breathing into it and trusting that your breath is going to make everything happen. It's helping it rather than fighting it.
Yeah, I think the part of hypnobirthing that I really put into practice, so you did hypnobirthing.
Yeah,
so, you know, they talk about like the peak. So you'd go up to the peak and you take it and then you come down again.
Yeah.
So I kept just thinking every like contraction that I had, right, I'm going to peak. And I kind of treated it as like, it sounds so silly, but it worked for me. I kind of treated it like waves and I thought, and I was in the water and I thought, right, I'm going to peak. It's going to be a really like strong wave and then it's going to come down and it will be just nicely washing against the shore. And that was just like a visualization that I just kept doing in my mind. And just, like breathing into it and just allowing my body, to just take course. And it just happened so lovely for me. Don't get me wrong, there were parts of it that were like...
Oh, the ring of fire. I mean, the ring of fire is a ring of fire.
That was the hardest bit, There's no sugarcoating that bit. But I didn't tear and, and it was just all like very natural. So in the water, gas and air. I did have gas and air. And there were some times where I was like... And they were like, you've got to get off the gas and air. Come on, we've got a contraction coming. But... I didn't tear, I didn't have forceps. It was all just very natural. The only thing that I will say that I struggled with is when I then did give birth to Loretta, where I was in the water, and I think most people that are in the water give birth the same way, where you're on all fours and then you're like leaning over the tub. Mm-hmm. When she came out, it was like this horrific panic that I was going to sit on her because then they were like, twist around, and obviously you're still connected by the umbilical cord. Twist around and we'll put you on her skin on skin, like put her on your chest. And I was like, well, how do I maneuver my leg? Like, where is she? Because you can't see, like she's behind me in the water. And it was like trying to maneuver so that I could get her on my chest without kicking her in the head or sitting on her. And And then I remember her being put on me, and where she was just still connected to via the umbilical cord, all I kept thinking was, who does she look like? Who does she look like? And I was like...
And at that point, they don't really look like anyone. They're so
No, my
bloated.
daughter came out and she was 100% her dad. And I was like, my whole pregnancy, I was like, I really want her to look like me. I really want her to look like me. Like, you know, like I really want to have this baby with like curly blonde hair and blue eyes. And I was like, who does she look like? Who does she look like? And her dad like leant down and was like, she is 100% me. And I was like, no.
And that's so difficult because that's someone that's obviously that's such a whirlwind of emotions. There's a lot of hurt there, and then this baby that you've grown.
100% Lee.
It's all right. It's nature. Do you know what? Nature actually does that with girls.
Everyone's told me that, and they said, oh, and then they start blending more into you. My daughter is all her dad. There's not even an earlobe that is like me. Every feature on my daughter looks like her dad, but, you know, that's fine. We've got over that now. But at the time I was like, why does she not look like me a little bit? And then, I remember them putting her on my chest and like, it was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful.
Do you feel like you could take it all in straight away, or was it?
I think where I gave birth so quickly, my body kind of went a little bit into shock.
Yeah.
So I was really like violently shaking. So when I got out of the pool to deliver the placenta, and that I didn't give birth naturally, they said, do you want to?
Oh yeah, at that point.
I was like,
screw it.
And I was
whatever
so
it takes.
shaking, and I was just like, give me the injection. Like,
Yeah,
let's
same.
just, because I just felt like uncontrollably shaking. And I couldn't really hold her. I was so nervous about holding her where I was shaking so much. So I gave her to her dad, and they put like some foil on me and stuff where I was like just violently shaking. So I think at the beginning it was all just a little bit like chaotic, and then they were like doing all the tests and stuff, weighing her and everything. We managed to actually stay at the hospital overnight, and that was quite nice.
How did it feel when you first held Loretta?
I think at the beginning it's just like that euphoria and like dizziness, isn't it? I think then when I took her home, and I think again this is the whole thing where she looked nothing like me, I think it was really hard just thinking that she was mine.
Yeah.
I think I had like this like picture in my head of what my child was going to look like, and where she did come out with like jet black hair, dark eyes, dark skin, like her dad, I just kept thinking she doesn't look like me at all. And it was like, I can't believe that she's my baby when she looks like, because I weren't looking at a mini me type thing. And then I just think, as the days progress and the weeks progress, then you start feeling like, oh my God, she is mine.
Yeah.
It's just hard thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is mine and this is mine forever.
But there's so much pressure, like we talk about it quite a bit, that there's so much pressure on those initial moments and that bond.
Yeah.
I feel like you're meant to see, we're told through films or whatever that we're meant to lock eyes with our baby and that's it. The world makes sense and there's an instant bond. And
Yeah.
and I think actually it's a stranger.
It grows.
It grows, yeah.
For sure. Don't get me wrong, like the minute I had her, like I was like, oh my gosh, like you get that love and that euphoria. Like I felt that love, but it was hard feeling like she was totally connected to me.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to like, fully understand that I'm a mum now and this is like, she's mine forever. And I think that then grows, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like you instantly feel like a mum.
No.
I do also think this was another thing that I had, like where I had 2 weeks in between Loretta being born and going into lockdown. There was 2 weeks of like intense visitors.
Yeah.
And that if I could do anything again, I would shut the door and say no visitors.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing that I found really intense. And I remember there was times where I would like just cry upstairs. And the thing is, where I was living with my parents, so I was renovating my home, as I said. So I was renovating my home and it wasn't quite finished. So I brought Loretta home to my parents and ended up locking down with them. And where my parents' house has always been like chaos because of like fostering, it's always just been like the hub, the home. everyone just feels like they can come round the whole time because they're like, what difference does it make? 3 more people. There's so many people that live in this house. And it's always like, it's a good thing. It's always been like an open house.
Yeah.
There's always been like 9 people that live in the house, and then people knock and come in whenever they wish. So I went home there and I was just, absolutely inundated with guests. I remember when the midwife came round, so it would have been like 2 weeks, like maybe that first midwife visit. And she came into my room and she was just like, there shouldn't be 11 people in this room. There was like 11, like my friends, my family. Like it was just like chaos. Like there was just people constantly there. And I felt like, you know, COVID's like was beginning and there was all that worry, like, oh my gosh, like what if she catches COVID?
Yeah.
And then all these people in the house the whole time. And I felt like maybe I couldn't quite tell people to go away.
Yeah.
I think that's something in me that has developed and come more now that I'm a mum and fully into my mum role. Now I can be a lot more assertive.
Yeah.
Now I'd say like, no, go away. Like this is my priority. My daughter's my priority. Building a bond with us 2 getting our sleep, me being able to breastfeed and, you know, do all the things that were important to me at the beginning without everybody here.
Yeah. Well, I always found that I'd get people turning up and they had runny noses or they were coughing. You're like, what are you doing?
There was someone that turned up, and I won't say who it was, and she had the end of a cold sore and she held Loretta. And I was like, I went up to my room and I had like a breakdown because there's all these things online about like cold sores can kill. And she was not to know. She doesn't have children. And like, oh my gosh, it was like, I had this mental breakdown. I was like, oh my God, like my child. I think that I've become stronger as a person as I've got older as a mum. Now I'm a lot more, I will say when I don't want something to happen.
Yeah.
But I think before having Loretta and at the beginning of having Loretta, I wasn't as assertive.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I could do anything again, it would be closing the door, no visitors. And my second child, third child, any of my friends and family that listen to this, you're not coming round for the first month. Maybe 3 weeks. Immediate family can visit, but like you just like, it's just too intense otherwise, I feel.
Yeah. I think if people can come over and they can help themselves to the kettle and the biscuit jar and make sure you've got some food, that's nice.
Yeah. I mean, I just think the way that I felt at the time, I didn't even want them breathing the same air as us. I just wanted them out.
Well, so
I just wanted to be with my baby.
What a strange time to be with a newborn when there's so much turmoil going on around the world. Like, I know that I was transfixed to the news in a really negative way, you know, just watching these every day. We were just looking at the news for numbers, like, and just that fear. So to lock down, and you know, I think especially when you're a new mum and you're that feeling of protectiveness, and you know, but also being quite overwhelmed with what your new situation is anyway, to have that all added on top, that's a lot.
Yeah, and also as well, like they say, don't they, that labour, maybe not my labour, but most labours are like 3 marathons. And it's like, you just need to rest and recover. You don't really need people in all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, going back to like COVID, when I locked down after 2 weeks of Loretta being born, I found it just like so magical and so like blissful and peaceful, and just like, I really just loved that like newborn bubble. So I think when I next have children, I'm creating my I'm locked down. I'm saying, no, I'm in lockdown now, because that was what I loved the most.
Yeah.
Like just being at home with my baby.
Well, it takes away the pressures of other people as well.
Yeah. And I think that that's why it was so nice at the beginning as well, because there was no pressure of like being anywhere. And, you know, when we did lockdown, entertaining anybody else, there was like no real like pressures on time.
Yeah. How did you get on with feeding? So
I breastfed Loretta till she was exclusive till she was 6 weeks. At 8 weeks, I started combination. At 6 weeks to 8 weeks, I did combination. And then at 8 weeks, I formula fed. I found it quite intense, the breastfeeding. I put enormous pressure on myself that I was going to breastfeed for 6 months.
Yeah.
And
where did that come from? Was it just something that you thought that's what you wanted to do? Was there something?
I think I just wanted to, in my head, I just felt like I wanted to give her the best. And, you know, I still stand by that the milk out of your breast is obviously better than formula. That is best because it's coming from you. And I've always tried to go for like natural products and eat healthy. I'm quite like a health conscious person. So in my head, I was like, I so want to give her like what I've made and this natural liquid gold. And then it got to 6 weeks when I was really struggling. I had like milk fever this one time and it was really horrific. And I was just pumping constantly and like my boobs felt so sore and I just was never getting enough. And my mum was like, stop, like, I know you want to breastfeed. I totally get it, but this is affecting you. And whilst I do believe that the milk from our breast is better, I also believe in nourishing a newborn isn't just through what you're giving them, feeding them. It's also through how you're stimulating them, your happiness and your smiles and you're talking to them. And in the end, it was like, yeah, I can give her my breast milk, which is the best that I'm putting in her in terms of feeding her. But then if I'm exhausted all day and sleeping and just like miserable, then I'm not going to be stimulating her enough. So you have to work out it's not just what you're feeding them, it's what you're giving them in terms of you. Yeah. And if you're not giving them the best of you, then, you know, then that's another part that's suffering. So you have to like make the compromise, don't you? It was just like balancing it out. So
because there was that pressure that you put on yourself, because I was the same. How did you feel when you eventually went, you know what, actually...
Heartbroken.
Did you?
It was my mum that did it as well, and I was really angry with her. So yeah, I exclusively breastfed till I was 6 weeks, so it was only me doing the night feeds. And my mum was like, let me do a night feed for you. And you can just get one night good sleep. So this was like 6 weeks in. As we know, the newborn stage is like, that is the newborn stage, as beautiful as it is, it's the hardest bit because of the sleep deprivation. Like that is the torturous part of the newborn stage, and why probably people may get that confused with like postnatal depression. Don't get me wrong, postnatal depression is a thing and that's a whole nother thing. But I think I was thinking, oh my gosh, is this postnatal depression? But it's not. It was just, I just needed sleep. Like your mind does tricks on you when you've not slept. And at that point, I was like 6 weeks into disturbed sleep every 2 hours. And the thing is as well, I'm a really bad sleeper anyway. So she'd wake up after the 2 hours. It would take me an hour to get back to sleep. And then she was up again. So it was like constant broken sleep and just very little of it. So when she was 6 weeks old, my mum was like, give me the baby. I've had hundreds, because that's the thing, you're very territorial at the beginning. I was like, it's this is my structure, this is my routine, this is what I'm following, blah, blah, blah. No one intervened. And Mum was like, I have had hundreds of babies. If anyone can look after a baby, it's me. Hand her over, I'll do one night. So I was like, okay, writing her a whole list. This is what you need to do. Blah, blah, blah. I'll pump, I'll give you this. Had a whole little like routine and structure. And Mum gave her my breast milk that I'd expressed, and she just said that she wasn't settling. So she topped her up with formula. And I know a lot of people, will be like, how dare your mum? And at the time, I felt that as well. The next morning, she told me, and I was like, what? You gave her that poison? I was like, how do you're never doing a night feed again? She was like, she really settled. She was just like, you know, maybe like you just need to try it and stuff. And the thing is, I know a lot of people will be feeling like angry, like thinking, oh, your mum should never have done that. But then where we are so close.
I mean, I just can't, I can imagine being in that room and just hearing about it. I want to just sit in the corner with kind of covering my eyes, but not covering my eyes, and taking it all in.
I regretted every hour that I slept.
Did you?
That morning, I regretted every hour. I was like, why did I sleep? Why did I sleep so peacefully? And then after that, I think where I lived with her, like we just
Had you in lockdown, there's no way you can't escape.
Exactly. And the thing is, I am naturally a very forgiving person. I get over things quite quickly. I mean, I'm friends with all my ex-boyfriends and people just don't get it. But I am just a very forgiving person. So I was like, okay, right, we'll move on. Everything in life happens for a reason. Trying to think of this motto. And then, yeah, I think it was like once I initially got over like the upset and the hurt, I think then like 2 days after that, like I'd finished the breastfeeding and my mum was like, why don't you just top her up, you know, with a little bit of formula. She's already had it. So then I did it and I found that she was settling a lot better, and that's how I kind of like transitioned. Yeah. And then by 8 weeks, she was on formula.
Can you remember the last feed?
Yeah. And then I remember then she was on formula and then she started sleeping through like very quickly.
Right.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like I've got the sleep. I even remember a midwife saying, you know, she shouldn't really be sleeping through at 8 weeks. So you do need to wake her up and just give her a little top up. And I was like, no, like I'm sleeping. Like, why would I ruin my life again? Like, I was like, no, I'm not waking her up. Like, she's doing absolutely fine. This is the other thing. Like, they'll give their advice, but you've got to kind of make your own rules. I never woke Loretta up and look, she's still alive now. So then I think I was like maybe like 2 weeks into like sleeping lovely and thinking, oh my God, I've cracked this. This is amazing. And then I started thinking, oh, you know, the novelty of having good sleep, it wore off. And I was like, oh, I would quite like to breastfeed again. And then it just like...
Did you try?
I think I probably did, yeah. Trying to think back, I think I probably tried to put her on my boob a few times, and I just think she was like uninterested at that point. Yeah. Look, I think next time around, I would like to try and do it a little bit longer. But I think subconsciously, like now I don't think I would make it such a big deal if I did have to introduce formula. Yeah. It wouldn't break my heart as much. I think that you probably, after experience and like the more children that you have, the less pressure that you put on yourself. Yeah. I mean, you can answer for this, but you know, the giving her formula was like a big like pang on my heart. And I think I wouldn't feel the same with the second child. Sending her to nursery was like a massive debate that I had with myself.
Really?
Horrendous. And second child, I wouldn't do that as much.
What was that big debate? How old was she?
I sent her to nursery when she was 16 months old, and it was the biggest war that I had with myself. I cried about it for weeks. I felt so guilty about it. I used to do polls on my Instagram the whole time, just trying to think what other mums were doing. I was like, how old was your child when you sent them to nursery? And then they'd have to vote. I was like constantly like just trying to research about it. Because I went back to work when Loretta was very young because like you, I don't get a maternity pay. Mm-hmm. I work for myself, and I also enjoy what I do. I'm very lucky. Like I'm in a very career fulfilling job, and I've always been lucky that I can steer my career in the way that I want to. So I always enjoy it. And when you have a child, the doors open for you so much in terms of brands want to work with you. So, you know, for me, I was getting all these opportunities, and it kind of felt like right to just take it and not really take a maternity leave. And when she was young, it was so easy to manage because, as we know, baby sleeps so much. So I was like, this is brilliant. I can work, and I've got Loretta. She sleeps so much in the day, so while she's asleep, I can film all my content and do all these lovely things and work with all these amazing brands. And I'm living the dream really, because I've got a career and I've got a child. And I really like loved it and enjoyed it, and it was so manageable. I'm one of these people as well, like I've always got to be doing things.
Yeah.
So I think for me, if I did have to completely stop, I don't know if I would feel fully fulfilled. Like if I did just completely stop, I think for me, I've always had to have like my brain ticking.
Yeah.
And then it got to her turning 1, and then it became harder to manage because, as we know, they stopped napping for as much. So it became hard to manage, and I was still so busy. It wasn't slowing down like all of the, lovely mummy sort of stuff. And my parents were helping out when they could, and I was just kind of like juggling. But then also, where my career isn't a normal 9 to 5, I can kind of work whatever hours I want. So I'd put her to bed, and then I'd film a lot of my content, or I'd edit things, and I'd do my contracts and stuff then. But then I was up till quite late. So it got to about 16 months when it was like really hard to manage.
Yeah.
So I was like, shall I consider nursery? And I just felt so guilty for thinking it, because I was like, she should be with me. She's too young. And a lot of nurseries as well take at 2, don't they? Like what I found around where I live, it was a lot of nurseries take till 2. So I was like, oh my gosh, the majority of mums obviously don't send their children till they're 2 because of...
That's quite late.
Yeah. A lot of nurseries that I was approaching, they were like, we don't take till they're 2. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't be even considering it then.
Well, if you think most maternity leaves...
Some of them are like 6 months, aren't they? Exactly.
Yeah. So those kids have to go somewhere.
Exactly. I just felt so awful for like even considering it. But, and I could have just turned down the work and just not sent her. But I was like, I really enjoy this. And I don't want to like put this like on pause, and then, who's to say that I could just pick it up again. And I thought, I really want to do the both. And I felt guilty about wanting to do the both.
Did you vocalise the fact that you were feeling guilty? Because I'm sure had you vocalised that, you would have got an influx of people going, I felt that.
Yeah, I did. And this is why I think like people are all quick to like shun down social media. But like, I think it's like such a great community for people. And yeah, like I'd constantly be like asking things on Instagram, and people would be like, it's fine, and I'm a mum, and I did this, and so yeah, a lot of people would give me like support and reassurance, but I just think sometimes it's just like a mental battle with myself. And I think as well, where Loretta was, me and Loretta, obviously, I was a single mum, and although we locked down with my parents, at this point now we were living back at my home.
Yeah.
We slept together. She'd only ever like slept every night with me. At that point, she'd never done like any overnights at my parents. We'd always been together, and where it was locked down, like I don't think I had a night out until she was like 2. We'd never been apart from each other. When I first sent her to nursery, the separation anxiety was hell. Like I would come away from the nursery in floods of tears, and then I wouldn't even be able to work for the first hour. And I'd be like playing with like my head, like, shall I just go back and pick her up? And that went on for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, she just never wanted to go to nursery. And the thing is as well, Loretta started talking really early as well. So it was also a curse, because she'd be like...
able to actually vocalise what she was thinking.
Yeah, she'd be like, no, I stay with mummy, please, no, mummy. And I'd be like crying at the nursery door. And then it just got better. And now, like, she really enjoys nursery.
Yeah.
She's got all her little best friends. And I do think it's important... it's an important element of childhood for them to have that like independence.
Yeah.
And also as well, like I wouldn't have been able to buy the house that we live in now had I have not worked that hard in those 2 years and took up all those opportunities.
Yeah.
So it's like the compromise.
Providing
battle.
means many different things.
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
exactly. And it was like a dream. Like we moved back to the house that I renovated, but I didn't have a garden. It was like I really just want to buy a house with a garden, and and I really want to. So it's like I did have to send her to nursery when she was 16 months old, but we wouldn't have this beautiful home that we're living in now that she loves. And so you just have to make compromises, like with the milk and, breast milk and formula. It's compromising with, all the outcomes and there's loads of factors.
Yeah. If you could write a letter on motherhood, who would it be to and what would you say?
I think I would write a letter to myself when I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. And also, share that with anyone that's facing pregnancy alone. Because as I said, when I was going through it, it was the worst thing in the world. But I'm not the first person that it's happened to, and I won't be the last. And I think it can be a really scary time. And I think I would just write to myself and say, when this baby comes, it will be the best thing that ever happens to you. And everything will work out, and you'll find a flow, and you'll find a dynamic that works for you. And don't worry what everyone else thinks, because that's a massive factor, I think. Whilst I was so nervous when I was pregnant, I think pre-children and maybe just like youth, you worry so much about what everyone thinks of you.
Yeah.
And I think when you have children, you really grow into yourself and feel confident in the decisions that you've made, and you become more assertive and stronger. And I think I would just tell myself, like, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks and anyone's judgments. You live your life the way that you want to live your life. And the more that you worry less about what other people think, the happier you'll be.
Yeah. So we end each episode with you completing 3 sentences, and this one segues very nicely.
Yeah.
Being a mum means.
Being a mum means making someone else your priority. You're no longer the leading character in your own life, are you? A new person is. And they become your entire focus, your entire universe. And whilst that can feel daunting, I also think the innocence and the pureness that comes through children also means that you get like a second chance to live your life.
Yeah.
And you're living it through their eyes. And I just think the world just becomes a lot more colourful because of that.
I like
because they live in like a childhood.
Yeah. Since having a child,
Since becoming a child, I have definitely become stronger, more confident in who I am, more determined, definitely, at like work and, success. And success comes in many different ways. But like, I just feel like a lot more passionate about the things that I do. And I can't remember what the question was. Sometimes I dwell off.
Since having a child,
and since having a child. And I just think like life has a better meaning. I think you become happier.
Yeah.
Since having a child, I've definitely become happier.
And I'm happy when?
I'm happy when I am in bed with Loretta, co-sleeping, and we have that like, I'd say 30 minutes before it becomes annoying that she's not going to sleep.
There's a window. There's always a window.
Actually, I'm going to reduce that. 20 minutes before it becomes annoying that she's not going to sleep. And she's trying so hard not to go to sleep. So she comes up with all these conversations and they're so imaginative. And she's so loving because she doesn't want me to have a go at her for not going to sleep. And it's just blissful and peaceful. And we're getting ready for bed. And we're all bathed and relaxed. And she's just chatting, avoiding sleep. And And
that
yeah.
20 minutes. Then after that, that's not
minutes.
happy, but
Yeah, after that, the 20 minutes becomes frustrating. But that window is lovely.
it's the happy time.
Yes.
Lydia, thank you so much. It's been so gorgeous to chat to you.
Oh, it's been lovely. I can't believe how quickly it's gone.
I know.
We could chat forever.
I know. We'll have to continue after. It's all right. Thank you.
Thank you.